What's really left to decide? And if you take too long, how much does it affect the Houston Texans? Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans. Let's talk about this offensive coordinator situation for the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans said earlier this week he's going to take the week to figure out what to do with his staff, making some changes or not making some changes. But the big thing is offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. Now, you can wait and hang around a little bit if you're trying to find, say, an offensive line coach, if you're trying to find a tight ends coach, if you're trying to find a wide receivers coach. Like, you can hang around and just kind of let the process flow and let it come to you, and you can still find some of those guys. But as the NFL makes some changes across these various teams, the longer you wait to make a decision on Bobby Slowick, the more difficult it could be if you fire Bobby Slowick. Now, to me, I feel like Bobby Slowick's got to go. That has been where I have stood with this offense for weeks now. I mean, what's there to discuss about this offense? DeMeco Ryans sits down Monday afternoon or Tuesday over Zoom because they're both frozen in, or Wednesday or today, or sits down tomorrow. What does Bobby Slowick say to DeMeco Ryans to explain how this offense went awry in 2024? Like, what's there to discuss? You were handed a situation that was even better than the previous year from an offensive talent standpoint, from a defensive performance standpoint, and the offense performed worse. And they performed worse in some of the controllable areas that Bobby Slowick can drastically affect with this team. For instance, the timing of when they get the ball to Nico Collins, red zone plays, when they decide to run the football, predictability in play calling. They failed in a lot of those categories over the course of the season. A lot of those things are Bobby Slowick controllables. I mean, he can't make Shaq Mason a better right guard. He can't make Kenyon Green a better left guard. He can't make Stefon Diggs and Tank Dell stay healthy. But you can swap up the way that you call plays to avoid predictability. You can adjust to the way that teams play you from a week-to-week basis. You can adjust to what teams adjust to you at halftime. Remember when we spent 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, talking about how they couldn't score a second-half touchdown? Bobby Slowick, what's there to discuss about 2024? And I know you can play a little bit of the blame game. The offensive line wasn't very good. The offensive line had issues blocking for C.J. Stroud. The tight ends that we had on the roster weren't great at pass blocking, which made things even more difficult. Nico Collins missed 5 weeks. Tank Dell missed time, and Stefon Diggs missed half the season. Joe Mixon got hurt. Again, those things are difficult to explain away for Bobby Slowick. But how do you explain predictability in your play calling? Not adjusting to the way the opposing teams play you. Not putting players in the best situation to succeed. For instance, late in the year, maybe don't have Dalton Schultz block because he seems to have no interest in blocking. So what is there to discuss if you're DeMeco Ryans and you're Bobby Slowick? It really doesn't feel like there's a way that Bobby Slowick can explain away how 2024 went and make you comfortable about 2025. Because how does 2025 look better? Like, what is Bobby Slowick explaining when he's talking about his job and how he can be better? Like, what is he saying? I mean, if your accountant, gets something wrong and misses a number, misses an entry into the accounting, they can just say, hey, I'm going to double, triple check my work and make it better. If a lawyer didn't know a law, I can study more. Like, what's Bobby Slowick saying to explain that 2025 is going to be better than 2024? I've self-scouted myself, and I know how to fix this. Oh, really? You had the opportunity going into 2024 to maximize what happened in 2023, help repeat it. Quarterback, better offensive talent, defense was better, and it got way worse. And a lot of the stuff you were in charge of messed up. Oh, well, I'll self-scout. Okay, well, in the season, you didn't really self-scout really well, and you didn't really change things or adjust things. Oh, well, I'll try something new. Well, the league adjusted to you and you didn't have anything new. So how would it look better in 2025? And yeah, the players could get a little bit better. Maybe they get a right guard that's better. They get a tight end that can block. They get a little bit more depth on some of the offensive skill positions, and the team gets a little bit better. But you're not looking for a little bit better if you're the Houston Texans. You're looking for a whole hell of a lot better if you're the Houston Texans. You've got to get much better on offense to meet the level that that defense has and find yourself in the AFC Championship or maybe the Super Bowl. Like, can you sit here today and think to yourself, yeah, Bobby Slowick's going to be that guy? Bobby Slowick is going to be that guy. And if they keep Slowick, they've got to change some things in the offensive staff. They got to get him a new offensive line coach. They probably have to get him a couple of other new position coaches. And they need to bring somebody in there to watch over his shoulder. Because if you keep Bobby Slowick, he immediately starts 2025 on the hot seat, which is no way to start a job, but it's better than not having a job. You got to start Bobby Slowick on the hot seat in 2025, and then that makes it an even more tenuous situation with a little bit more pressure. And, well, there was a lot of pressure this year, and he folded. So how's he going to do under more pressure next year? Again, I don't know how 2025 from Bobby Slowick's controllables is going to look drastically different than 2024. So if Slowick's going to go, he needs to go. If Bobby Slowick's going to get fired, the Texans need to make that decision sooner rather than later. Not only is it a potentially long process to find an offensive coordinator, you've got significant competition for the offensive coordinator job. It's going to be a long process. They talked to 3 guys when DeMeco Ryans became the head coach. They talked to Nick Caley, who was with the Patriots at the time. They talked to Bobby Slowick, and they talked to Cliff Kingsbury. And they talked to Kingsbury like 2 days before they hired Bobby Slowick. This process could be much longer. This process could involve many more names. And this process has competition. Now, you had competition the last time around, but you have significant competition this time around. A multitude of teams have openings at the offensive coordinator position. And when you start thinking about comparing the Texan situation to other situations, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Now, moving on Slowick now, getting him out of the building and starting the process, you're playing catch up to one team that's a really good opportunity. You're playing catch up to one team that's an okay opportunity. And you're playing catch up to one team that's a springboard job. The team that's a really good opportunity that you're playing a little catch-up to is the Detroit Lions. Ben Johnson left a few days ago. The Lions have probably been putting together their hot board for their offensive coordinator spot. Now, they've got in-house solutions to Ben Johnson leaving, but that's also a super attractive job. When you think about the offensive line that they have, the skill position players that they have, the quarterback is in place, and oh, by the way, it was a really good offense last year. They can go out there and find somebody. And if you compare the Texans' job to the Lions' job, the Lions win out. So you're playing a little catch-up on them. You're also playing catch-up on a team that I don't know is exactly on the same level as the Texans' job, but it's an intriguing position. The Seattle Seahawks have already interviewed a handful of people for their offensive coordinator job. They interviewed Clint Kubiak, who's a guy who potentially could be on the Houston Texans staff if they wanted to move on from Bobby Slowick. But they interviewed Clint Kubiak, who previously was in Minnesota and most recently was in New Orleans. They already interviewed Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach from the Detroit Lions, for their offensive coordinator job. Now, I can't tell you for sure Seattle's a better job. It's within shouting distance, but I like the Texans' situation better. Their quarterback situation is better. I like Joe Mixon better than the Seahawks running backs. And the division is easier to navigate than the NFC West. So it's not a bad job, but it's not nearly as good as the Texans. But again, a little head start for them. Kyle Shanahan is looking for an offensive coordinator, and Shanahan's job doesn't include calling plays. So you're automatically a little bit better job than the offensive coordinator job for the San Francisco 49ers. But you are a trampoline if you're the 49ers to a better job. How many times has a Kyle Shanahan disciple ended up with an opportunity to be a head coach across this league? Again, you might have a guy that you like that you haven't moved on Bobby Slowick yet, but he's talking to Kyle Shanahan, and Shanahan's like, hey, man, take this job now or never. And he takes the job, but maybe you wanted him, but you haven't fired Bobby Slowick yet. I'd be worried about that if I was the Houston Texans as well. And the latest little bit for the Texans is a really big-time offensive coordinator job just opened up. The Jacksonville Jaguars seemingly are set to hire Liam Cohen from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers tried like hell to keep Cohen as their offensive coordinator, and the Jaguars tried like hell to mess it up. Ultimately, they didn't. They got rid of Trenton Baalke, and they're going to be able to hire Liam Cohen to be their head coach. Well, that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator spot just catapulted the guy to a head coaching job in 1 year. That's a really attractive spot. Their offensive line's excellent. They got 2 running backs. They got a lot of wide receivers. Their tight end's pretty good. Oh, by the way, the quarterback pretty darn good too, in Baker Mayfield. So you're fighting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they scramble to figure out who their offensive coordinator is going to be. And we already know they can go out there and hire a damn good offensive coordinator. They just hired a guy who was one and done with them as a head coach now. So if Slowick's got to go, he's got to go now. You got to start this process now. You can't lose out on one of your guys because you waited around and you were still kind of assessing and figuring out. Like, you can't lose out on at least a chance to talk to some of these names because all of a sudden you wanted to wait around and try to figure out about Bobby Slowick. Not to mention all the names and spots I've already talked about. There's going to be other opportunities that pop up across the league. The Jets are still looking for an offensive coordinator. Ultimately, the Dallas Cowboys, if they make a hire, they could find themselves with an offensive coordinator opportunity or opening if they don't hire an offensive guy. But it looks like they're going to hire Brian Schottenheimer. But even then, he may not call plays. Maybe you're going to have a play calling opportunity in Dallas. Like, you don't want to be behind the 8 ball playing catch up to some of these teams, even if your job is better than some of these opportunities, which for Tampa, for Detroit, it's not better than those opportunities. I wouldn't want to call offense for the Texans instead of the Lions or the Buccaneers. Those are better opportunities. And in a hot, contested offensive coordinator market, getting the early start, getting the jump on somebody, getting your foot in the door, hitting a good sales pitch to somebody, that might be important. Kyle Shanahan just showed us that you don't need to stick around with a guy that runs the other side of your football. Kyle Shanahan runs the offense. He's the end-all, be-all for the San Francisco 49ers. He calls the plays, okay? He's the guy with the headset. He makes the decision. He's that coach. For most of his time in San Francisco, he's just handed the defense to somebody. Well, they initially had Robert Saleh. You didn't need to make any changes. They had DeMeco Ryans ready when Saleh was gone, and then they didn't have anybody ready. So they had Steve Wilks for a year. You know what Kyle Shanahan did when Wilks was a little bit disappointing? He fired him. He moved on from him after a year. Then they had a new guy, the guy they had this past year. And it was a little bit better. It was okay. It was, just okay. Nick Sorensen. Well, Nick Sorensen's not getting retained. And you know why? Because Kyle Shanahan's moving on. Kyle Shanahan, after 1 year, back-to-back years, is getting rid of the guy that runs the other side of the football. Now, he's got an upgrade on the way. And that upgrade for him from Nick Sorensen is Robert Saleh. He's going to get Robert Saleh back over on his side. So I don't know how DeMeco Ryans watches his old boss do it with the other side of the football back-to-back years and doesn't do it with his other side of the football in this second year where it was really disappointing as an offensive coordinator. So I feel like if the Texans are going to move on Bobby Slowick, they need to do it sooner rather than later. They need to make that move. They need to get out from under Bobby Slowick. They need to start the process and get right in the mix with some of these intriguing offensive opportunities like the Lions and the Buccaneers. They need to showcase why they're every bit as good as they sell the opportunity to guys that might be interested in both of those jobs. They need to showcase explicitly why they're better than the Jets job, why they're better than the 49ers job, why they're better than the Seahawks job. And they need to get a guy in here that can take advantage of what CJ Stroud brings to the table, maximize what this offense can do in 2025, and help get close to the level of that defense plays so the Texans can go deeper and further in the playoffs than they ever had. The offense held them back in 2024. Keeping Bobby Slowick, it will make it the number one main story in 2025, and it will be more pressure than he was under this year, and I don't believe that that is a successful situation for the Texans or for Bobby Slowick. The offense will still be the story in 2025. I'd feel much more comfortable if somebody else was in charge of it. Let's get to your comments, questions, joys, and concerns. get to as many as we can throughout the course of the live stream. I get a big gulp there. Super chats will go to the front of the line. I'll try to get caught up on as many of these as I can. Good to see you. I must Pandaline. Juan Flores. Been a while since Cody's going live. Glad to catch one. We'll be doing more. Don't you worry. We'll have live ones from Mobile, Alabama next week, talking about the Senior Bowl. Good to see you, Joshua. Stasio. He wants T. Higgins. Too expensive. Rick wants Chip Kelly and his hand-picked staff. I mean, I don't know if Chip's leaving Ohio State. Mike M., I'm ready to hear what the Texans' next move should be. Tell us, Cody, please. Man, we'll get there. We'll get there. Timeout Houston says, shit was horrible. All right. Slowick is done. Listening to D'Amico's comments, there was some improvement throughout the season. That says it all. Look, the comments from the press conference earlier this week, if your job security was determined by how much your boss said about you, there was not a lot of job security for old Bob Slowick. Okay? If it was determined that, hey, I'm safe because my boss said a lot of nice stuff about me, then Bobby Slowick was not safe because D'Amico Ryans had about 18 words to say about Bobby Slowick, and that was it. That was it. Tay says D'Amico Ryan's greatest downfall seems to be his loyalty to mediocrity. If he stays loyal to mediocrity, then, well, it could be a downfall for him. These are some of the tough things that head coaches have to decide. These are some of the tough things that head coaches are in charge of. You've got to be able to make difficult coaching decisions, hire good staff members, okay? It's not easy to do. Like, I don't want to sit here and act like, oh, it's obvious what D'Amico Ryan should do. It's very easy. Like, it's not. It's not easy. It's difficult. But just because you're loyal to a guy initially doesn't mean you have to always stay loyal to it. Mike M., do you nightlight as Bear Cop at some club somewhere with that mustache? No, I do not. I do not. No law enforcement for me, despite the law enforcement mustache. Jalen asks, can Bobby make some adjustments when the opposite DC figures out his schemes? I don't think he can. He didn't showcase that ability to do that this year. Even coming out of the bye week, when he had time to look at it and he felt like, he had some momentum out of Jacksonville, he didn't showcase the ability to do that, Jalen. So I don't think that he can. We got a super chat. It jumps to the front of the line. Texan says, why don't you do a story on Houston football about potential free agent offensive linemen and then do a live poll on SNL? We can vote on position players that we want. Okay. You'll get a ton of free agent offensive lineman conversation on the channel here on YouTube, on Houston football. Absolutely. That's in the hopper, Texan. We'll have guys you can draft, guys you can sign, guys who might get cut that you'd want to go get, maybe trades that you can make. We'll have lots of that. And we'll discuss all those guys at length, either on SNL or right here. Sometimes Landry doesn't like to get in the minutia of offensive line conversations. I do. I like to talk about the guys. I like to look up the Pro Football Focus ratings. I like to call and talk to other media members. Hey, was this guy any good? What's going on? Tap every source that I can to find out if these offensive linemen are worth a hoot. I'll give you this, Texan. You will get this. You will get offensive line previews out the wazoo. I promise. Appreciate you for the super chat as well. James Clancy says, you already know D'Amico Ryan softened up these past few days and wants to keep his friend. That's something that he does at the podium. You think about it was the Jets game. We'll look at everything. The blocking wasn't good enough. And then by Monday, he was okay. Like, he was like, we got to do better. It wasn't as fire and brimstone come Monday. So maybe he softened over the week, or maybe the disappointment grew and he decided to move on from his friend. But if he did, let's make it happen. Get the chopping. Rick says the offense needs new leadership from the top down. I tend to agree with you. Brandon says they convinced Cohen to come over here. You can't do that. Okay. He's offense coordinator. Can't go lateral. He's a new head coach. He wanted a head coaching job. We're not talking about Cohen. We need a replacement OC for Bobby Slowick like Chip Kelly. All right, let's talk about Chip Kelly here. Let's talk about Chip Kelly and why I believe Chip won't leave. Let's talk about Chip Kelly here for a moment, because Chip Kelly is not going to be a head coach in the National Football League ever again. And Chip Kelly is at the helm of a college football juggernaut right now. Okay. Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes, who just won the national championship. And that's not getting any way worse in the next few months or years. Ohio State's going to stay a machine. Ohio State's going to stay a juggernaut. And so why would Chip Kelly, and I know there's a conversation about, oh, well, recruiting's easier now. You negotiate contracts with these kids. You don't have to go sit at home and eat mama's cooking and convince a kid to come to Ohio State anymore. Okay? And they've never had a problem recruiting regardless of who's calling the plays up there. I mean, Brian Hartline, their wide receivers coach / co-offensive coordinator, he goes all over God's green earth finding the best wide receivers in the world, including plucking them out of Texas and dropping them into Columbus, Ohio. So you're going to have the best players every single year. You're going to have a situation that is advantageous to you from the beginning every single year. And if you want redemption, go beat Michigan. Okay, I know people talk about, well, Chip Kelly's redemption in the NFL. Chip Kelly's we never had a question about Chip Kelly running offense. Our question was about Chip Kelly running a team. He's never going to be a head coach in the National Football League again. So, there's no catapult that he needs to be in the NFL as an OC to then get another head coaching job. No one's ever given that opportunity. So stick around in college, win a few national championships, always start with the deck stacked in your favor. And if you don't like a quarterback in college, it ain't working, you swap them out. You swap them out and you do something different. They literally did that at Ohio State last year. They didn't like Kyle McCord, swapped him out. They got Will Howard. They don't like the kid they have next year, swap him out, go get a different guy. In the NFL, you're pot committed to guys. And if quarterbacks don't perform, they don't get fired, you get fired. Chip Kelly ain't coming here. All right? Chip Kelly ain't coming here. He ain't leaving Ohio State. All right? Bubba Homeschool says, Slowick ain't going anywhere. No one better is available. Bubba, you couldn't be more wrong here. There's a lot of really good guys that would be available. There's a lot of guys who'd be upgrades. There's a lot of guys with experience who'd be upgrades. There's a lot of guys with potential who'd be upgrades. Bobby fell apart this year and didn't create a belief that he could get it back together. Rick says, what about Oregon's offensive staff, OC and the O-line coaches? So Will Stein is the offensive coordinator for the Oregon Ducks. I'd talk to him. If I fired Bobby Slowick, I'd have Will Stein in here talking about it tomorrow. Okay, if I fired Bobby Slowick tomorrow morning, I get Will Stein on a plane this week and get him in Houston, talk to him. Okay, Oregon's offense, incredible. Before it was Oregon, UTSA's offense by him, incredible. And he's a smart guy. He talks about his offense. It's a pro-style spread that translates to the NFL. People are like, that's just words. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, it means Bo Nix looked pretty damn good his first year in there after running it at Oregon. It's not a bad offense, okay? It's not exactly translatable because Oregon, again, the deck is stacked in your favor every time. You got the best kids, the best athletes. You're faster than most of the Big Ten, so it's an advantage for you. But Stein seems like a pretty good coach. He's a fast riser. High Horse says, I was hoping Kevin Stefanski would get fired from the Browns so we could get him for an offensive coordinator. Stefanski would have been nice. Yeah, it'd have been interesting. You could probably do better than Stefanski, but you can do a lot worse. He's ultimately not available. Will Monroe asks, do you think there would be anybody willing to trade for Dalton Schultz post June 1st? Probably not. And I'd be interested to know what kind of money you save if you do that and you're the Texans. And you don't get the cap savings until then. It's what are you spending the money on as you're trying to get the cap savings? Is it better to just get the guy or just better just have the guy on the team? Because let's see. If you trade him before June, you save $9 million, but who's trading for him? Okay, I can't imagine teams are lining up to get him. If you release him after June 1st, you save, God, you save $500,000. If you trade him after June 1st, you save $11.5 million. So, I mean, I don't know anybody's wanting to do that. And if you all of a sudden have $11.5 million, what are you really doing with it in June? Unless you're trading for one of these franchise tag guys. But franchise tag guys, when you trade for them, you got to pay them. So I don't know what you do with the money, and I don't know that anybody's taking Dalton Schultz off your hand. Will, again, do you think Nick's waiting to see if Bobby gets poached? You get compensatory picks out of him. You don't get compensatory picks out of Bobby Slowick leaving. He's not a minority. So you don't get picks if he leaves. Julian asks, is Gerard Johnson leaving? As quarterback coach Gerard Johnson, I don't know. If there's a new staff, it stands to reason that Gerard would be on shaky ice. I mean, maybe his relationship with C.J. Stroud gets him another crack at it. Gerard Johnson's also reportedly on the short list for the Jets offensive coordinator position. He's an A&M guy, just like Aaron Glenn. He's an humble guy from that area, just like Aaron Glenn. So there's some connections there. And I'm sure that they know each other. And I think there's been a long rumor that if Glenn gets a job, Gerard's on the short list for his guys. So that's the only one that he's been connected to right now, though I would think that a lot of teams who have offense coordinator opportunities as they start to pop up might be interested in talking to him, though because the offense took a little bit of a step back, maybe it's a little bit tougher to get some of those interviews and opportunities. Good question, Julian. Gunner, I see your question. We'll get to it here in just a moment. Jalen says, can't wait for you to cover the Senior Bowl and have you cover the wide receivers, guards, possibly some defensive tackles. We'll have it all covered for you, baby, except for quarterbacks. Although there's this one Canadian guy that I'm pretty excited about watching. He's like 6'6". He's literally played in Canada. I wouldn't use a draft pick on him, but, if he went undrafted. Will says first 3 picks need to be wide receiver, O-line, and running back. Bubba says if Bobby had a decent O-line, he'd be fine. I don't think that's the case, man. I think the defense has caught up to what he does. Jew says treated Bobby like Grenard and Cashman did before letting them go last year. Bobby like Grenard and Cashman did before letting them go last year. Oh, you're saying like, oh, okay, it took a while for them to kind of figure out what they were doing, and then ultimately they hit free agency and move on. Mr. Bo on the top, good to see you. Stefon says, Bobby Slowick have go, move on from him, we gone, and up in the same place. Going a little translator here. If you don't change Bobby Slowick out, you could find yourself in the same spot. Pandaline says mediocrity on the offensive side of the ball. Cody, what do you feel about Tanner Engstrand from Detroit? I think he's probably in line to maybe be the Detroit offensive coordinator. But if they fired Bobby Slowick, I'd talk to him. He's been a part of that Detroit staff for a few years and had a pretty impressive resume. Let me pull it up here because I did this big offensive coordinator thing. So let me pull it up here and I'll pull up his history. Because if I remember correctly, he had a pretty darn interesting resume when it was all said and done and you looked at it. All right, so he's the Lions passing game coordinator. He played quarterback at San Diego State and was a coach at San Diego for about a decade, where he was also the offensive coordinator. He's been on the Lions staff since 2020. So he's probably a candidate for Johnson's staff in Chicago. He's also a candidate to stick around in Detroit and help them run the offense. But I'd talk to him. I would talk to him. And you think about guys like, okay, like the job is passing game coordinator. They were able to throw the ball really well in Detroit. They got some nice weapons there. And Jameson Williams has grown into a nice role. They got veterans that fit in between Williams and Amon-Ra. So, there's some good. Mr. Bo asked, when will the first mock draft be? We'll do one after the Senior Bowl. So, next week, Mr. Bo on top. Can't wait CJ's cheap years, get someone else in there. Yeah, I mean, you got one, maybe two, depending on how you look at it, cheap years left. The money starts to hit if he gets paid at the end of 3. The money starts to hit in year 4. It's not all the money, but it starts to hit in year 4. And you got to think Will Anderson's probably having his money start to hit kind of in year 4 as well. So you do need to maximize the time while you have it. Will asks, would you prefer interior offensive line starters in free agency and everything else in the draft? I want guys who have played at the NFL level to replace their current offensive linemen. So I'm not as in favor of rookies. I'm more in favor of veterans, but veterans who've played like a little bit of football, not somebody who's played a tremendous amount like Shaq Mason and might be ready to fall off. Bubba says Bobby gets 1 more year. D'Amico gets at least 3 more. Deal with it. Yeah, Bubba, I just don't think that's the way to go. You might be right, but it's not the way to go. They need to move on from Bobby Slowick. We should keep Howard at guard and draft Warren or Helm and a wide receiver and trade Dalton Schultz. Yeah, trading Schultz, it's tough. Who wants him? Who's going to give you anything for him? Wouldn't be easy to find a partner. If you could, obviously you do it. And you move on from him and have it be Cade Stover, Brevin Jordan, maybe a draft pick, maybe a free agent as the tight end room. So he might ever tell you look like Paul Blart? Yes. I get, when Farley was alive, I was a youngster, so I didn't quite look like him. But in college, they called me Farley. So I got Farley a lot. And then when you have the mustache, Kevin James as Paul Blart, legendary role, probably an Oscar snub. So I get that every now and then. When I'm clean shaven and I have my hair a little bit longer, I got a little bit more Farley to me, get a little bit of, Tommy boy to me. But I haven't been clean shaven in a long time. So the Farley stuff kind of fell off. I did someone said one time I look like Melissa McCarthy, which did not feel good, but it was funny. But it's funny. It's easy to say D'Amico is soft with his coaches and players. We honestly don't know how he is behind closed doors. Well, if he sticks around with Bobby Slowick for 1 more year, we got a pretty good idea. We got an indication about it. So I need to see both of you and Landry cook up in a mock draft. I probably will not mock draft with Landry. It seems like something he wouldn't be in favor of. He wouldn't want to do. But I love a mock draft. I love a mock draft. So I'll do about probably 15 of them on the YouTube. I'll do another 30 you guys never see. H-Town Red, do you think Nick Caserio maybe trades up to get Kenneth Grant, Tyler Nolan if they're on the board since they could focus? If they are on the board, since they should focus on the O-line. I don't know that Caserio is a move-up guy in this draft, and we're still kind of figuring out exactly what this draft is. For instance, last year, not a lot of first-round, super talent, maybe more mid-first, late second heavy. He moved back and decided to take 2 swings at that portion, then try to get into the top portion of the draft from a, talent standpoint. So I don't see him moving up in this draft. I would tell you the likelihood of a Minnesota move from last year is actually kind of high. Move back from 25, pick up an extra pick, swing at 2 second rounders, or maybe use that pick to go get somebody who's really good, who's not fitting on another team, something like that. No great guards this year. There are a lot of tackles trying to play guard this year. It feels like in the draft. That's what I was trying to say. All right, hit the Tanner Inkstrand. All right, we had 2 questions here. I'm going to try to get current on the questions. Hey, look, it's Will Kunkel, everybody, from Fox 26, kicking it with Kunkel, the award-winning show online. Myself, Landry Locker, DJ Bieneme, and Will Kunkel did a Texans roundtable earlier today. You can catch that on the Fox 26 YouTube channel. It was a lot of fun. Great to see my good friend Will Kunkel in here. That is the real Kunkel. That is. It's a shame he didn't jump in here, send me the text message. Hey, let me in. All right. So 2 people asked roughly the same question. I want to get to it because I want to get out of here at 10:30. Landry Locker is going to get going at 10:30. I don't want to step on his toes. So, Gunner and Traden Allgood both asked the same question. Cody, who would be your offensive coordinator pick? Who would you hire for offensive coordinator? So I have a short list, and I feel like there's definitely a top guy that I like, and then there's sort of like a little bit of a step down where I like the next couple of names about the same, and then it's everybody else. So my top guy, my number one guy, and I feel like he would bring my number one offensive line coach with him. My top guy is a guy by the name of Nick Caley. Now, if that name sounds any little bit familiar to you, it should. Nick Caley is on the LA Rams staff, and his official title on the Rams staff is tight ends coach / pass game coordinator. Now, Caley previously was in New England as the tight ends coach. He was the 3rd person to interview for the offensive coordinator job when the Texans talked to Bobby Slowick and Cliff Kingsbury. So the Texans have talked to him before. He went to LA, was on Sean McVay's staff last year. When I say last year, I mean 2023. And then at the end of 2023, the New England Patriots offered him $3 million to be the offensive coordinator in New England. He turned it down, stuck with Sean McVay for 1 more year. And now Nick Caley is one of the hot names when it comes to offensive coordinators. He's been with McVay for a couple of years. He's got experience with the New England Patriots way of doing things. That's 2 different systems, the McVay system and the Patriots system. He's a younger guy. And earlier today, the Athletic Football Show termed Nick Caley as the next Ben Johnson. So tell me that wouldn't get you excited. If I told you the next Ben Johnson is the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, you'd be pretty excited. I'd be pretty excited. And Nick Caley, who coaches on the Rams staff, maybe you want to bring over, I don't know, the assistant offensive line coach for the LA Rams, Zach Cromer, who's my top offensive line coach pick if they change out the offensive line coach, which, my God, they've got to do that. So Nick Caley is my number one guy. He's my number one. That's who I want to the Texans to hire if they fire Bobby Slowick, is Nick Caley. After Nick Caley, there's a section of about 2 or 3 guys that I'd be interested in. Also, on the LA Rams staff is Dave Ragone. If that name sounds familiar, it should. He's a former Texans quarterback. Ragone is the Rams quarterback coach. Sean McVay is very good friends with Dave Ragone. Ragone has coached for McVay 2 different times. In addition to that, Ragone has coached for Matt Nagy. Ragone has coached for Arthur Smith. So now think about this. Multi-system experience. Experience with Sean McVay, experience with Matt Nagy's system, which is the Andy Reid style, and experience with Arthur Smith, who is the teach tape for the zone running scheme. So that's a lot of experience in a bunch of different places. And Sean McVay is going to bat saying, yeah, he's one of the offensive geniuses on our team. I like that about Dave Ragone. In the Dave Ragone section category level is Josh McCown. Look, I never wanted him to be the head coach of the Houston Texans. Could McCown be the guy that calls the offense, calls the plays? Yes. Is his lack of experience a little bit annoying? Certainly, it is a little bit annoying. But you saw what he did with Sam Darnold this year. Kevin O'Connell trusted him to come in and coach his quarterbacks. That's pretty high praise for a guy who's only been around coaching a couple of years and has obviously a lot of experience with coach type roles, being a backup quarterback. They let him call plays one time when he was the backup quarterback. So he's number 2 on my list. And then kind of right there in the category with them is a guy named T. Martin. T. Martin was a national championship winning quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers. And then he bounced around the coaching staff a little bit. He was an offensive coordinator at USC. He most recently has been the quarterback coach for the past 2 seasons in Baltimore, where, I don't know if you know this, Lamar Jackson's about to win back-to-back MVPs. So not to say T. Martin turned Lamar Jackson into that, but they had him at wide receiver coach. Their new offensive coordinator came in. They moved him to quarterback coach. He's got experience calling plays. He's kind of below McCown and Ragone for me, but Caley's my top guy. Nick Caley's my top guy, and I think that he'd be a home run hire. He's smart. McVay likes him because he's kept him around. He's gone back to McVay instead of taking any job, so he's clearly looking for the job. And you got the nerds calling him the next Ben Johnson. It's worth a shot. You know who's not the next Ben Johnson? Bobby Slowick. All right? Bobby Slowick ain't the next Ben Johnson. Now, they had a good year this year, maybe. But Nick Caley is my top guy. Okay? Got experience with Caserio, got experience with Sean McVay, experience with the Patriots way of doing things, experience with the McVay way of doing things. I really like what Nick Caley brings to the table. That's my top guy. Now, he'll be probably one of the most sought-after names in the offensive coordinator market, and he might do what we've seen guys do, which is hang around an extra year and wait for a better opportunity to pop up. But I do enjoy the idea of Nick Caley being the next offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. Tay says, so Caley is to you what McCown is to Landry? Yes. Yes. Doyle with the very kind super chat. He says, here's $5. Use it for a taco. I will be using it for a breakfast burrito tomorrow, Doyle. So I appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. So that's where I'm at. We started with, let's make the change. Let's get this thing going. By the way, Nick Caley thought to be one of the guys on the short list for the New York Jets. So if you wanted Nick Caley, you might want to get a move on. And oh, by the way, a former McVay disciple was the guy who ran the offense for the Buccaneers and Liam Cohen. Don't you think Nick Caley would like to make that move when he just saw another McVay guy go in there, run an offense, and then go be a head coach? So 2 spots that are competitive for a guy that you might already want, a guy that you could really use. And we're sitting here still trying to figure out if Bobby Slowick is going to be the guy. Doyle says, hey, the $5 wasn't for a breakfast burrito. Okay, I'll get a taco with it. You're very particular, Doyle. I appreciate that. Can I get a taco plate, or do I have to get one $5 taco? This is fair. If the man says get a taco and I tell you I'm getting a burrito, I didn't listen. So, okay, couple minutes here. I saw Texans Cap in there. He had a great article the other day about Shaq Mason's money and some of the other money, the situations and issues that are popping up with the offensive line. So check out Texans Cap's Cap and Trade on Substack. I have it linked somewhere on mine on Houston Football. Cap, if you want to throw it in the chat there, you certainly can. Let's see. Did I miss anything here? Rob says taco, check mark. Yeah, you're right. I should have done right by Doyle here. Cap and Trade, new newsletter coming in the morning. So check out Texans Cap stuff. Drop the link in here, Cap. Drop the link in here. Hilner Thorst. Oh, hold on. I'll get this. Hilner Thorsteinson. Next year, I'm feeling real good. And he says, love the beard, to be honest. I might bring the beard back. I might cut the mustache. You never know what I'm going to do. I might show up here with a shaved head one day, looking like a fat, stone cold Steve Austin. I feel really good about getting Hilner Thorsteinson's name right. It's a pretty good job. Appreciate you checking in. Hilner. We're just going to call you Thorsteinson because I can say that one. 70s porn stash. It is pretty simple. I'm watching this show called Rivals. The main character has got a great mustache that I will not be able to copy, which is annoying, but it's a great mustache. So Well, now I need to see Stone Cold Cody Stoots. You want to see Stone Cold Cody Stoots? What? It may be a while. I gotta lose some weight before I start shaving my head again. Okay. Landry Locker should be coming your way any moment now. That's the link to his live stream. And you need to go over there and tell him in the chat, Cody sent me here. So go over. Landry's going to be heading over there. Or Landry's going to be going over there. You head over there. Go watch what he's got going on. We'll have plenty of live streams and other different things about it here on this channel. So appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate the super chats, the comments, sticking around, hanging around, talking OC madness with us. And remember, when Nick Caley leads the Texans to the Super Bowl, you heard about him first right here. Right here. So we end the live streams the same way each and every time. This is my hope for you. This is my charge for you as well. I want you to eat good. I want you to sleep good. I want you to be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you over in the locker room chat as Landry gets going right now. Appreciate you watching.